Thank you for taking my short quiz. I'm Chef AJ, and I used to be overweight or obese for over 50 years. So you can bet that most of my life, I got all of these questions wrong. In this short video, I'll reveal which one of the 9 statements is true and which are false, and why. However, I can't possibly give you all the knowledge you need to achieve the health and the body you desire and deserve in a short video like this one. So that's why I'm also giving you free access to the Real Truth About Weight Loss Summit. After watching this video, click the button below to learn more. On the next page, I also share my story, including how my weight issues led me to attempting suicide. But before that, let's go through the 9 questions you answered and find out which ones are true and which are false. A lot of how much we weigh is predetermined by our genes. Now, is that true or false? Well, it's actually false. Today we have identified about 60 genetic markers that elevate our susceptibility to becoming overweight. And of those, the top 32 combined account together for less than 1.5% differences in body weight. What's even more fascinating is that Dr. Dean Ornish has done multiple studies on how certain food and lifestyle choices can turn our genes on or off. And they found within just 3 months, over 500 genes related to our weight and health were changed simply by making smarter choices. Of course, Dr. Ornish will share all about his research and recommendations in the summit, so make sure to tune into his talk. After we lose our weight, we can maintain our new body weight if we eat and exercise just like any other slim person. Now, is that true or false? Well, it's false. You see, research showed that when you lose 10% of your body weight, you will have to typically consume an average of 25% less calories to maintain your weight compared to someone of the same weight and activity level who didn't gain weight in the past. We also know that while we can grow new fat cells, we actually never get rid of them. They just shrink. It seems unfair, doesn't it? But the good news is this: it doesn't have to be a life sentence. You see, in the summit, Dr. Rosanne Oliveira shares her cutting-edge research done on identical twins, because that gives us the best insight into the subtle differences into what makes us overweight and how we can enjoy life eating large, delicious meals and maintain our weight loss over time. Fat is fat. It doesn't matter where it is. True or false? Well, that's false. There's 2 types of fat, visceral and subcutaneous. Visceral fat is the fat that surrounds our organs, and subcutaneous fat is the fat under our skin. You see, visceral fat is much more dangerous because visceral fat has been linked to metabolic disturbances and increased risk for cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. And in women, it's also associated with breast cancer and the need for gallbladder surgery. But it doesn't stop there. In the summit, Dr. Fuhrman explains how yo-yo dieting actually increases visceral fat. In other words, unless you know that you won't yo-yo diet again, it may be better not to lose weight at all. Of course, that's not the goal, which is why Dr. Fuhrman will share with you how to lose weight for good and end yo-yo dieting as well. When it comes to gaining weight, a calorie is a calorie. After all, if we don't burn it, it gets stored as fat, right? True or false? It's false. Now think of it this way. A fat cell stores fat. Now if some fat comes across that cell, it gets sucked right in. But what if you consume carbohydrates? Those turn into glycogen, and our fat cells don't know what to do with that. So to store calories from carbohydrates as fat, our body first has to turn glycogen into fat. Now this process is called de novo lipogenesis, and it is a very inefficient process. As a matter of fact, the metabolic cost is about 30% of calories consumed. So you store many fewer calories as fat if they come from carbohydrate sources. But there's a caveat. You see, the source of carbohydrates matter. So tune in for the presentations from Dr. Goldhammer, Brenda Davis, and Dr. Shintani, and learn how you can be full of energy and lose weight by using just the right carbohydrates to your advantage. Exercising is the best way to ramp up your metabolism. True or false? Well, it's false. Dr. Barnard from the Physicians Committee of Responsible Medicine did some fascinating research. They essentially put an astronaut helmet over people's faces after they ate a meal to measure exactly how fast the body is burning calories. Then for 3.5 months, these people would eat a certain diet, and at the end would come back to the lab to do the same test again. Now, what Dr. Barnard found is that after eating an optimized diet, people's metabolism had increased by 16%. He compares it to having the metabolism you had when you were young, and who doesn't want that? So please join me on the summit when we pick Dr. Barnard's brain and get him to reveal exactly how you can optimize your diet as well. Fat cells are dormant body tissues that simply store energy until we need it. False. Harvard Medical School says it's appropriate to think of fat as an endocrine organ or gland, producing hormones and other substances that can profoundly affect our health. Meaning fat doesn't just sit there. It is by itself a chemical factory. Not only do fat cells excrete estrogen, which for women having too much estrogen is linked to breast cancer, they also release inflammatory cytokines, which in return can cause joint pain, inflammation, migraines, and so forth. So if you're suffering from those kinds of problems, you have to watch Dr. Clapper and Dr. Esser's presentation on the summit as they explain the biology behind this and how to counteract this effectively. Eating less and exercising more is the key to permanent weight loss. Well, that's a tough one. Mathematically, this may make sense, but for two reasons this fails. You see, first of all, adults miscalculate how many calories they eat by about 20 to 35%, and we're hardwired to eat about 3 to 5 pounds of food a day. So counting calories and portion control is a recipe to go crazy and eventually fail. Second, studies show that adding physical activity actually has a very modest effect on weight loss. So even if you did exercise that 48 minutes that it takes mathematically to burn off a serving of French fries, that doesn't mean this math will actually turn into weight loss, because our body adapts to changes in consumption and activity level. So we need a smarter solution that works with our body, not against it. That's why I can't wait to share the presentations by Dr. Michelle McMacken and John Pierre. They are all about turning the science into a doable solution that you can implement at home without going crazy. Sugary foods are the worst, and they make us put on extra pounds. Well, that's false. Think about it. If sugar really was the problem, we'd be binging on sugar cubes. But we don't. We binge on cookies and cake and ice cream, the foods that combine sugar with fat. And it is that fat-sugar combo that's absolutely the worst, because sugar provides our body with energy, but that means that all the fat gets stored as fat. We're hardwired genetically to seek out the most calorically dense foods in the environment. And because fat is 9 calories per gram, while carbohydrate is only 4 calories per gram, fats are the most irresistible food that we have. On the summit, you'll hear from Dr. Alan Goldhammer on how food companies systematically abuse our biology to trap us and make us consume foods we know are junk and overeat them. If you give in to cravings, it means you're not disciplined enough. Absolutely false. I used to believe that all my life. I would beat myself up and feel ashamed and powerless. That's until I learned the truth. Get this. Dr. Deal will explain in the summit how the obesity epidemic can be traced back to the mid-'80s. That's when tobacco giants started buying processed food companies. I hardly think it's a coincidence, especially because we now know that by layering certain ingredients and flavors, companies can create foods that are habit-forming and for many people, even addictive. So if you find yourself craving certain foods that you know are bad for you, or if you give in to temptation, or if you feel hungry even though you've just eaten, remember this. It's not you. It's the food. But it also means we need special strategies to deal with this, which is why we have multiple speakers that will help you overcome these challenges, like Dr. Deal, Dr. Gould, Dr. Tarman, Dr. Sabatino, and many, many more. For me, this was the missing piece. And if you have tried diets and failed before, it may very well be the missing piece for you as well. Thank you once again for taking this short quiz, and I hope you've learned something. I know that until I was 52 years old, I got a lot of these wrong, and as a consequence, I had been obese or overweight pretty much my entire life. But then something changed, and I want to do the same for you. So if you're struggling with your weight, if there are a few stubborn pounds that you simply can't let go of, if you have to fight cravings and temptations, if you feel guilt or shame when it comes to your food or your body, if you want to prevent or even reverse the diseases that come with being overweight, Or if you simply want to thrive and live life to the fullest, free of worries with your loved ones, then click the button below and find out how. The real truth about Weight Loss Summit can change your life. Remember, it's completely free to watch, and you'll get the best tips from over 30 of the world's most renowned experts. So click the button now, and I'll share with you my personal story and all about the summit on the next page.